Hello, listeners. Welcome to our English program podcast, Kaleidoscope. Listeners, our today's episode is the second part of our program, and we have the privilege of hosting Vaibhav Walunj in our studio. Vaibhav is a distinguished policy professional with extensive experience in consultancy and project development through his organization, Step 2. So in our last part, we were talking with Vaibhav on the remarkable journey of 3,000 mile that he experienced through Africa, traversing the Sahara Desert, the largest desert on the planet. We talked about where he comes from, what policy means to him, and we also talked about his village and how he is the third person to graduate from his village to becoming the person that he is today. We talked about why he chose Africa for this journey. Today, we are going to talk in detail about this journey that he undertook. So Vaibhav, welcome again to our program Kaleidoscope.
Thank you so much, Gaurav.
Vaibhav, let us talk about the first country that you visited in this journey. That must have been an exhilarating experience, because I want to know what was going on in your mind and what were your perceptions about Africa. So, and how did that change while on this journey?
The first place that I visited in Africa was its northmost part, Tangier in Morocco, which is connecting point from Europe to Africa. And I was amazed to see how the terrain was changing. And starting traveling from the big cities and going towards Mountain Atlas, which stories that we had heard within childhood, it was enchanting experience in the sense of you are not looking at Africa from those European lenses always, but yet there is some sense of Orientalism attraction towards this country. And traveling from Morocco really allowed me to understand Africa beyond the traditional perspectives that one can think of. Because within the amazing city of Marrakesh, that year was International Monetary Fund and World Bank's summit that was happening in Africa after 50 or so years.
Oh.
And going to the country when it was facing global calamities such as earthquakes was in itself was a difficult part for its citizens as well as the people who are working within the development field. Most of the people that I had knew around Morocco were students who were studying in different university institutions. So I got to visit many of the universities in Rabat, in Casablanca, and in few of the other small cities within Morocco. And it allowed me to imagine a different sense where the European or the Western way of looking towards the world is changing, and you are creating something of your own within your identities and nurturing it further. Be it going to biggest cities as Casablanca and watching one of the biggest mosques, biggest skyscrapers that you had ever thought of, to going to smaller villages within the mid and high Atlas, where some of the Berber villages, Amazigh villages are still there, knowing about their movements of indigenous people, and sort of remembering all the Adivasi movements that you have seen in India, and finding how close you are as a person to this culture that you had not known before a week or so, was really enchanting experience for me. But above all, the experience through Morocco was sort of changing pattern of where we want to go and which our desired routes are.
Okay.
In order to become the Europe within Africa, or the two Moroccos as it is often called, you see a large disparity within the living standards of people from rural and urban area. The monarchy in Morocco and democracy at the local level, and how these two are working with each other. How much some of the people in Morocco love talking about their king, and they always keep him in high regards that none other people within a monarchy would do. And yet, you find some of the instances where these people are still facing trouble with their fallen kasbahs, with their fallen houses, and waiting for some agencies in order to help them. It was a most challenging and mind-boggling travel, in my opinion, as you often think of such countries as leaders within such geographies, and yet, to some extent, you find inherent disparities and differences within their opinions. And hence, while moving from Morocco to Western Sahara, one of the highly disputed regions that can start a fight at any point of time, was very revealing to me, that brought back some of the memories in the past. And it led me to many questions in my mind rather than solving them. Visiting the great city of Dakhla within Western Sahara, and now administered by Morocco, where one sort of development from Morocco is pouring in. Many Europeans are traveling to the place. And yet the local Sahrawi people, who are the original residents of Sahara Desert, are not being represented over there. Was a very difficult thing to understand of which way of development you really want to go.
Right.
It asks you very personal and very deep rooted questions on the global scale as well as at very personal emotional level.
So Vaibhav, when you're traveling through Morocco, how was your experience? Because they had recently were hit with an earthquake.
Doing this journey from Morocco to Sahara and other countries really challenged my view of development and how we seek it. But apart from these points, enjoying the great food and musical culture of Morocco was one of the very curious and enchanting experience. I met many musicians. I was able to attend one of the recording for the National Radio Studio of Morocco, where some of the villagers and musicians were gathered together for the recording, and interacting with them was one of the most amazing memory. I met few young students and their organizations who were helping few villages within Atlas after the earthquake, and assisting them in that operation was a great thing. It was really hard to pay for my taxi rides and for my hitchhiking, because once you start talking to the person in whichever little French possible, they would pay the bills on your behalf, and you are taken aback with sort of hospitality these people offer. And it changed you a lot as a person, and you're never the same once you complete that journey. So I guess the experience from Morocco and then going towards Mauritania and Western Sahara was one of the tipping points in my experience, I would say.
Vaibhav, while you were heading through this journey, were there any specific individuals or experiences that you significantly remember and which impacted or altered your way of thinking?
While traveling from Morocco to Gambia, I met many young people who were traveling alongside in the opposite way. And every one of them had Europe in their eyes, who aspired to reach to Europe. And they thought it would be solution for every problem they had ever faced. Dealing with those expectations and answering their questions about Europe, and yet not killing that hope that they had in their mind, was one of the experiences that moved me deeply as a person. Often I did not had any answers to these questions, but yet there is possibility that with the help of these youth, you are able to create some of the answers. People will often be very disappointed if you do not greet them, even if you don't know them. So you always have to be talking, and you don't have to be talking for the sake of talking or doing small talks, but you have to be involved over there. Because no matter where are you working or what serious job you are doing, somebody will be yelling "Iya matale" at you, which is mean you are mad. And you have to be happy in order to respond that. So even if you want to navigate through some of the other parts, there will be help coming from unimaginable ways. For example, when I was in Senegal, I used to often ask people, do you know any place where I can live? And they would often say, yeah, you can come to my home and you can pitch your tent over here and you can live with them. I guess encountering people with such gestures, treating their hospitality in very positive approach is the way to go forward. My tea consumption increased a lot while traveling through Africa. There is a tea that they make from green teas called ataya.
Okay.
Which has to served in a very specific way. And if you like the tea, then you have to throw the glass in a specific way. Was a very different and a difficult part for me to do. We often think of desert as absence of life, but the colors of the sand that you see and the dunes when they are shifting, they also shift the life with them, and the vast natural life as well as human life and the dreams that are shaping through this sand were really something that I had never imagined that I would experience in such localities.
Wow, that's great. You had collaborated as a policy advisor with the National Assembly of Gambia in West Africa. So how was that experience like?
My appointment had came when I was in Morocco, so I thought of traveling to Gambia rather than directly airdropping to this country, going through this journey that can introduce me to some of the cultures within Africa and make me familiar with few of the problems. And with my experiences, I was able to work with this amazing lot of young people who are suggesting few of the policy solutions for Gambia, a country which recently came out of a supposed authoritarian rule, and were trying to find few answers to the migration, equality within democracy on gender, and few of the problems of employment. Doing policy analysis with these people, with this young generation, amazing personalities who had studied from all parts of the world and now were coming back to Gambia in order to start some venture, intervening with different community solutions and working within their localities to develop a different alternative to the progress of Europe, was really amazing experience, that you understand that there is not only one way of living the life, and you can change your surrounding with whatever tools that are available at your end. Migration being one of the things that Indians also experience on day-to-day basis, or which I myself am product of. It's not always a bad thing to happen. And you can find a very positive new possibilities of living life through it. It has been very difficult for different governments or institutions to handle this sort of migration. But it should not be seen in only in negative way, as few of the people who came back from these journeys or who left Europe and now settled in their home countries have done few of the very amazing things. For example, I met a large bunch of people, Umar and others, who were working in handicraft industries or tailoring business for providing clothes to almost all of the Gambia through their small ventures in the Banjul city, who had came back from Europe and started their venture. Such experiences and such stories that I encountered were really motivating and hugely inspiring. I found many Europeans are actually living in Africa. Most of the streets in Banjul, you will find every other shop is run by Indian or Pakistani person who have seen a large possibility of investing in Africa and taking their businesses forward. Africa is often claimed as America of Indians, and rightly so, because due to large cultural heritage, many similarities within the culture, Indians and Africans are natural partners within all of the situations, problems, and possibilities that they are experiencing. And hence, how much we are helping these partners through every possible way, how much we are culturally associating with them, will determine our future together.
That's great. So Vaibhav, I remember in our last part, you had talked about Africa's perception of India, and how they were communicating with you and bonding with you on Indian films. So what perceptions other than that did you notice among Africans regarding India and Indians? And how do you think these perceptions shape global interactions and collaborations as well?
Within Africa, I thought I would be treated as the only person who are going through this, because when I was in Mauritania, I remember the place where I lived in Nouadhibou, one of the port cities.
Okay.
The person I had lived with and I asked refuge for the night told me I was only the second person that he had met, the other being one cycle Baba who is traveling on cycle to all of the countries.
Yes.
I was prepared for all of sort of questions about the culture and everything. But at the next time when you're asking hitchhiking through any vehicle and one Bollywood song is playing within that truck, was the experience that you do not have to often explain yourself. And the language of the culture or affinity among the culture, which is naturally there, is much more loud and collaborative than you could ever possibly imagine. About the Indians specifically working in West Africa and in Gambia, India and Gambia both being the colonies of UK and had faced some of the similar problems throughout their journey, I felt there was much more affinity and love among Gambians for Indians. I guess India and Indians have demonstrated that they only have capability of giving a different vision for Africa and India collectively while working in Africa. Because for large part of the history, Indians and Africans are traveling to each other's countries. And when you see the influence created by Chinese and Europeans within Africa on scale of resources, opportunities and employment, Indians have much more positive image within Africa compared to others. You will find many shops of Gujaratis and Rajasthani people suddenly on the streets of Banjul or even in smaller villages as Base. And you will be amazed that Indians are capable of doing so many things without any institutional support of the government or communities.
Right.
There are so many Indians living in Africa peacefully for a longer time, and hence more and more people going to Africa, understanding their culture, removing the stigma or a negative image of Africa that we have in our mind, and collaborating with them on equal foot and scale is the way to go forward if we want to provide a different vision to the world. Because clearly the Western world or European dream is crumbling, and world needs some of the new answers that we have to give to our younger generations.
Oh, that's great. So Vaibhav, we are coming towards the end of our interview. So I'd like to ask you, you made a lot of friends along the way. Are they still in touch? And based on your experiences and observations, like what are the pressing challenges that these African countries and indeed the world face, which require immediate attention?
Personally, the African friends that you make, you do not make them for one tenure. They are stick with you for the life. I was invited to so many marriage ceremonies, birthday parties, many family functions that I feel I have made an extended family within Africa.
Wow.
There were so many people, policemen, people who I just briefly met, were calling me afterwards for days, asking, where have you reached? Are you safe or do you need any help from my side?
Wow.
This gesture and hospitality and sort of human nature that should be there everywhere, or which is part of the Indian culture, is very vividly visible in Africa and is still present. I still get so many calls and messages from my friends within Africa, and due to my professional engagement within Africa, I often interact with them, and rightfully so, because I think we are on the same path and we are facing some of the same questions at the same point. As a young person who is living either on the west coast of India or west coast of Africa, you always look for better possibilities in terms of environment, health challenges, educational institutions, possibilities for employment on a very equal footing. So these interactions are always on the same part. I'm still connected with some of the travelers that I met on the way, the overlanding community that I was part of, and I still want to continue my journey to Africa. I have only covered the bit of the Sahara Desert in the northwest. I want to do the other 4 directions as soon as possible. But in terms of the problems that we both are facing, I guess finding some of the common solutions and working together on these solutions, in my case, in the terms of policy making, is my path of going forward. So through my consultancy services and whatever that I was able to learn through my tenure within the Institute of Development Studies, I'm offering these solutions to some of young organizations that are working in Gambia and West Africa at the present moment. I'm in collaboration with few UNDP programs, few women-led institutions in Gambia, the National Assembly and its associated bodies, to work on some of the solutions that are faced in parts of Lamin, Base or Serekunda and other growing markets in Gambia, of how they can deal with taxation, education, youth skill and women empowerment. Few of the solutions that are available in India can be altered and applied within Africa, as well as few of the solutions within Africa have to be implemented here. I'm starting a conversational program within the medical students of Gambia and India of how they can collaborate and learn from each other.
Great.
Associating the educational institutions, the University of Gambia with few of the universities over here is my future plan, and I will be immensely grateful if I find those opportunities to serve in both these countries on the equal footing. But these are the plans for the future, and I hope more and more people from India will be joining me and many efforts that other Indians are taking in Africa, because this is the land of opportunities and we have to move forward with a very positive mindset in order to take this global partnership for the purpose of going together and find new avenues for the future.
Wow. Listening to your experiences has been incredible. Like whatever you have experienced through those 3,000 miles, that has stayed with you, and it will also stay with us and our listeners. So thank you so much for coming in our studio and sharing with us this incredible journey. Wish you the best for your next journey as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. Also, at this moment, I would like to thank so many people that I was not able to say thank you on my journey. So wherever they are, who helped me through this long journey, crossing the continent that I had never been before, they made me the person that I am. So I'm immensely grateful to every one of them and really looking forward to catching up with them in the near future.
Great. Thank you. Best wishes and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks.